Now in this video today, I'm gonna show you how to reverse engineer your real estate investing goals so that you can finally start making actual profits in your real estate business. And I'm gonna break down step by step how to build a pipeline of properties that's consistent, predictable, and works in any market. So let's dive in. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Gary Bailey, and I'm the founder of White Box Properties. And I've been a full-time real estate investor for 20 years. I've bought and sold over 2,000 houses, and I'm an active real estate investor who's in the trenches, buying and selling houses every single month. I'm not some guru or YouTube personality. I'm a regular investor just like you. And I've also struggled to find houses for my business. First thing we need to do is step back and look at the big picture of where your houses come from. We can lump everything together into one of two categories. The first category is external sources. These are houses that other people bring to you. This might be a real estate agent, wholesaler, the MLS, and then you have internal sources. Those are houses that you source yourself. So maybe you buy a list of motivated seller leads from PropStream, or you drive for dollars, or maybe you run some type of paid ad or direct mail campaign. Now, I'm not suggesting that external sources are bad and internal are good. External sources can be an important part of your business, particularly when you're starting out. So it's okay to look at Zillow or build a network of wholesalers who bring you deals. But let's look at the differences of the two categories. External sources can be unpredictable. You have little to no control because they're coming from somewhere else. Your growth is pretty limited, and they're highly dependent on market conditions. These sources can be good for many new investors, and I've seen lots of investors make it just fine buying houses from other people. The justification they use for relying on those outside sources is usually cost or time. However, there's a cost to everything, and for external sources, that cost is simply baked into the price of the house. But cost isn't the only factor. If you want to actually create a profitable real estate business, you can't rely solely on external sources. If you've invested in real estate for any amount of time, you've likely experienced the wild swings in inventory that we're all subject to. And again, when you rely on somebody else or the MLS to get houses, you have no control over that supply. And then, of course, there's the limited growth. When you buy houses externally, particularly from wholesalers, you will rarely find that crazy home run deal where you end up making double or triple what you expected. Why is that? It's because the wholesaler or the market will squeeze any additional profit from the deal before it gets to you. I mean, think about it. Most wholesalers, they use the same formulas that you do when deciding what they'll ask for the property. If they end up getting some crazy cheap price on a house, are they going to pass that along to you, or will they just mark it up more for themselves? I think we both know the answer. Now, the same thing goes for the MLS. If a house comes on the market at a really low price, other investors are going to see that as well, and they're probably going to bid it up, so then it's no longer a home run deal. So there's always another investor out there who either gets their numbers wrong or they're simply willing to overpay just to get the house. That makes it really tough to compete with, and it's always going to limit your growth. Now let's talk about internal source properties you source yourself. Unlike external properties, these are predictable, controllable, and wildly scalable. So now let's look at the advantages of internal sources. So I want you to picture a pipeline, one that you've built and you control. You put money or effort into one end, and it spits out houses on the other end. Now, this does mean that you may need to invest some capital into advertising to find deals. And I know a lot of investors are hesitant to do that, but don't worry, I'm going to show you how to limit your risks and make sure you don't waste your money on something that doesn't work. So what you're looking for specifically in your business is predictability. And once you figure this out, you will know down to the dollar how many leads you're going to get and how many houses you'll need to see to find your next deal. Predictability is key, and it will limit your risk. The other huge advantage is that it's controllable. So when you need houses, you just turn on your pipeline and it will produce as many houses as you need. If you're in the middle of a rehab or you otherwise won't be buying houses for a while, you just turn it down or you turn it off. And I think a lot of investors have just accepted that they'll never really know exactly where their next house is going to come from. It's just kind of how it goes or part of real estate. And they just accept it as a fact. I did that myself for many years, so I totally get it. But if you really want to run your real estate business like a business rather than a hobby, you need to have set goals and you need to have a realistic and predictable method of achieving those goals. And the foundation of your financial goals in real estate is built on the number and the types of houses that you buy. And finally, when you control your own inventory, you can achieve scalability, meaning you can turn the dial up to 11 and get a ton of houses. So many houses that you may decide to expand your strategy and start selling houses back into the market of other investors as a wholesaler. Look, I know what you're going to say. I've gotten some pretty good deals over the years and I haven't spent a dime on paid ads. I get all my houses word of mouth. Well, I wrote this next part just for you, and I'm calling it the fallacy of the free house. If you're currently buying houses from wholesalers, and I'm not ripping wholesalers, I'm one of them, then you're already paying for leads. The difference is you're paying it at closing, but you're also paying 10 times more than you could be. What do I mean by that? Well, here's how my company operates. We use paid advertising to generate qualified seller leads. Each qualified lead costs around $200. It takes 10 qualified leads to generate one buy. So if it takes 10 $200 qualified leads to buy one house, that means our cost per acquisition is $2,000. When we sell that house to an investor, our average wholesale fee is $20,000. So in this example, our cost per acquisition of $2,000 is 10% of our average wholesale fee. Remember that percentage, 10%, because I'm going to come back to it later. So every time one of my customers buys a house from my company, they're effectively paying me a $20,000 finder's fee. And that fee is baked into the price of the house. And I know what you're thinking. We've all said it before, right? We say, look, as long as the numbers make sense, I don't really care what the wholesaler makes. And that thought process worked for a long time. But for many investors, they just don't want to put the time and the effort into sourcing properties on their own. For them, they'd rather pay somebody else to do the work. I mean, no different than paying a general contractor to manage a project. And like I said, I was the same way. And for many years, my company bought almost every property from the MLS, or we used wholesalers who made a ton of money. But the housing prices now have gone up, and labor and materials, those are all on the rise. So that model of just getting your properties off the MLS or working with wholesalers, that model's broken. And investors who want to succeed in this new market, you've got to learn how to source your own properties directly from sellers, or you're just not going to make it. So why is it that most investors don't source properties themselves? Well, there are some underlying assumptions that I think investors make when they think about sourcing their own properties, and it tends to come down to like one of three reasons. First of all, they might think that they don't have the time. So they say, sourcing houses myself, it takes time. I don't have time to figure out how to advertise. I don't have time to take phone calls or follow up with seller leads. And I definitely don't have time to go out and look at a ton of houses. I've heard investors say, finding houses is a full-time job in and of itself. The second is that they say they can't afford it. They say, well, marketing is expensive. I can't afford to spend thousands of dollars every year like some investors I know. I mean, what if I spend my money on an advertising campaign and it doesn't work? I'll never get that money back. And the third reason is that they're just simply happy with the status quo, or they don't really want to grow their business, which is fine. They say, I only need to do 2 to 3 houses a year. I can rely on referrals. And what I'm doing right now is really working for me. And you know what? I've gotten some pretty good deals over the years. I'm doing just fine. Well, I want to challenge each one of those assumptions. Let this number ring in your head, $20,000. Remember, that's the average wholesale fee that I charge with my customers for each house. And I work with investors from all across the country, and that's what I'm hearing from wholesalers are demanding in other markets as well. So here's a second number to keep in mind, 3, as in 3 houses a year. That's a pretty reasonable number, right? And arguably a little low for maybe like an experienced investor. But each of those 3 houses, they could be costing you $20,000. 20 times 3 is $60,000. So what if you could add an extra $60,000 to your bottom line in the next 12 months? How would that change your life? What would that do for you? I mean, how much would you spend to make that happen? $10,000? $20,000? Well, not necessarily. My goal for you is to source off-market properties with an average cost per house of $2,500. That's less than you would pay a real estate agent, much less. That means if you spend $7,500, you can make an extra $60,000. That's $60,000 in addition to your current margins, not $60,000 total. That's $60,000. That's just incremental profit. And it represents a 700% return on investment. I mean, what else could you invest in that would give you a predictable, scalable, and repeatable return in excess of 700%? So when I say that paid ads are the best investment you could possibly make for your business, that is exactly what I'm talking about. Once you start sourcing houses yourself, I promise it will change how you look at buying properties forever. In the next part of this video, I'm going to go over exactly how much you should be spending on ads to acquire properties in a section that I'm calling Know Thy Numbers. But before I do that, I wanted to let you know that I've written a book called The 12 Secrets to Buying Off-Market Properties. And as a thank you for watching this video, I've made it available totally free just for you. So whether you're a new investor or you're an experienced investor and you've been struggling to find good properties so that you can finally start making money with your real estate business, I think you'll get a lot of value out of this book. There's a link in the description below where you can download it for free right now. Now back to the video. I'm sure that a lot of you watching this video have probably never spent consistently on ads to acquire houses. So you may have done like a one-off postcard campaign or something like that, and it may or may not have worked. But before you spend a single dollar on paid ads to find houses, there are some fundamental principles that you need to understand. Because if you don't understand these fundamentals, you can end up spending a lot of money and not getting anything in return. And that's really, really risky. So here are the key unit economics that you need to know. And these figures will obviously be different depending on what market you're in and what strategy that you're using. Also, the numbers that I'm putting up are my internal numbers. I am no way projecting any type of income or success for you. These are just examples and they should be considered for informational purposes only. But the first one you need to know is gross margin per house. This is simply how much will you make per house. If it's a flip, how much will you net out after carrying costs, commissions? If it's a rental or a BRRRR deal, how much will you cash out? And then you could also include projected net cash flow over a period of time, say 10 or 15 years. If you don't know what that is, just take the last 3 to 4 houses that you've done and come up with an average. So if you made $50,000 on one flip and then $10,000 on another, then your average would be $30,000. So remember, be realistic. Don't really overestimate. You're just going to hurt yourself. The second key unit is the average deal life cycle. So this means how long does it take you to earn that gross margin? So if it's for a flip, how long from the day that you close on the property until the day you resell the house and get your check? Same for the rental. So that's why for rentals, it might make more sense to use the date from when you bought it, from when you cash out for the BRRRR. So, most investors try to shoot for like a 6-month deal cycle, though it can easily creep up to 8 months for sure. Now, the third key metric is cost per acquisition. And this may be something you don't really think about, but the cost per acquisition is how much did it cost you to acquire that property? Now, this might include commissions to agents, fees to wholesalers, commissions to, internal sales team if you have a team, or maybe acquisition associates. It might also include advertisements, paid ads, paid leads. It's basically what you spent to acquire the property. So, how much should you be spending? Well, an ideal acquisition cost would be no more than 10 to 20% of the gross margin that you expect to make. How do you calculate that? Let's say your average flip margin is $30,000. That means the most you should spend to acquire that property is $3,000 to $6,000. If you're wholesaling, then the same is true. Obviously, you're going to make a little bit less on a wholesale than a flip, but the percentages are basically the same. If your average wholesale fee you make per property is $15,000, then you shouldn't spend more than $1,500 to $3,000 in acquisition costs for each house that you buy. If you're spending more than that, then you're unnecessarily eating to your profits. If you're spending less, then you're potentially missing out on a lot of business. So now do you see how expensive that wholesaler really is? You're paying him $15,000 so that you can make $30,000 on a flip. When in reality, if you're sourcing properties yourself, it may only cost you $3,000. So now that $15,000 you would have paid the wholesaler, it gets added to your profit. So instead of making $30,000, now you're making $45,000. And yes, you may have had to spend $3,000 to get $45,000, but that's a pretty good return. If I was selling $100 bills for $5, how many would you buy? Right now, I want to change the way that you're thinking, and I want to expand your brain, okay? I think a lot of real estate investors, they set goals every year, but they just inevitably fall short. Well, why do they do that? Well, I think it's because they don't have a scientifically backed and numbers-driven approach to reaching those goals. And the main bottleneck in the process is either not having enough houses or not making enough money per house. They tell themselves, I want to make $100,000 this year. And then they just sit back and they hope the deals will come their way. But you can't just wait for houses to fall from the sky like manna from heaven. You have to take a numbers-based approach to controlling your property pipeline. And when you know your numbers, you can really dial things in. For example, let's say an investor wants to make $100,000 this year in their business, and they know their numbers. Well, then it just becomes a mathematical equation. They could say, all right, I know for sure that I can make $50,000 on every house that I flip. So in order to make $100,000, I need to buy 2 houses that have a $50,000 flip margin. And to get those 2 houses, I'm willing to spend up to $10,000, which is 20% per house, to find a deal like that. Then the next part of the thought process is, what advertising channels can I invest in that will kick out houses for no more than $10,000 per deal? From here, you can think much further than just $100,000 per year. So once you have your cost per acquisition dialed in, you can simply ask yourself, in a perfect world, how much do I want to make? How many houses would I need to do to hit that number? How much money am I willing to spend to hit that number? So do you see how you can reverse engineer your ideal outcome by using mathematical principles to scale your business? Here's what a real world example would look like. Investor A has a dream of making $500,000 a year investing in real estate. Now that's not including rental income. That's just simply flipping, wholesaling, and doing cash out BRRRR properties. So what would it take to make $500,000? Well, first of all, they need to know what their key unit economics are, which they do. They know based on past deals that their numbers look like this. The average flip income that they make is $40,000 per house. Their average wholesale income per house is $15,000. And they know when they do a BRRRR cash out, it's an average of $15,000. They also know that their estimated cost per acquisition is 10%, which is a total of $50,000. So in order to net $500,000, they're going to need to generate $550,000 in revenue to cover the cost of their advertising. But it could look like this. 6 flips at $40,000 would be $240,000. Let's say they also do 6 BRRRR cash outs at $15,000 for $90,000 total on top of that. And then let's say they do another 15 wholesale deals for another $225,000. So the total of those 3 strategies is $555,000. So again, $550, subtract the $50,000 you spent on ads to get those properties, and that's how you make $500,000 a year investing in real estate. Now, how many houses will that take? Well, in the scenario above, you would need to buy about 27 houses or, 2.25 houses per month. And if you're used to just doing, like 1 or 2 houses a year, that might seem like a pretty big lift and like an insane amount of houses, right? But it's definitely not a small number. But the point of this exercise, it's not to scare you or put some totally unrealistic goal at your feet. I mean, you could take that same $500,000 plan above and you could spread it out over 2 or maybe 3 years, depending on what your income goals are. For example, if you applied those numbers to a 2-year strategic plan, you'd only need to buy 13 or 14 houses a year with a projected profit of $250,000 on a $25,000 a year ad spend. Or you could stretch it out to 3 years where you're looking at, 9 houses a year with a $12,000 ad spend. And you could still net out over $100,000 a year. So remember what I said earlier? I wanted an opportunity to expand your mind and your way of thinking. And it's exercises like this that do just that. Look, if you're going to become truly wealthy through real estate and you really do want to build generational wealth for your family, you have to start thinking differently. And while you can definitely reach your goals with 1 or 2 houses a year at a time, and trust me, that's a very reasonable scenario and a very respectable goal, I want to challenge you to think bigger. Why? Because when you create a pipeline of off-market properties coming into your business, you will quickly find that you'll have more houses you know what to do with, which that's not a bad problem to have, right? Thanks again for watching this video. I hope I was able to expand your way of thinking a little bit. If you're interested in real estate investing and you want to hear more from somebody who's an actual investor in the trenches, not just some online guru, I've created a free community on School, and you can join it today. There's a link in the description below. I'd highly recommend you checking that out. I do live trainings. All my course material and everything is completely free. I give it all away for free because I don't think you need to spend thousands and thousands of dollars on coaching and courses to make money in real estate. So sign up for my community for free, and I'll see you in there. Have a great day.